Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'll just give maybe another minute or two to wait for more people to join. And maybe you can give me like a thumbs up or something that you can see the screen. Okay, awesome. Hey, John, good to see you. Okay, maybe we can start. I think we have a good amount of people who joined. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining this first wellness forum, first session. We're really excited. This is the first time we're doing this, so I just wanted to, welcome everyone. And this is an open forum. We do have 3 guest panelists today for the second session. And if you can use the chat box to just start asking questions as we move on, that will be really great. But at the second half, feel free to raise your hand or just continue to ask questions. That would be good. And yeah, I'll just dive into our presentation today. But I just wanted to quickly introduce that the Wellness Forum is part of the COLE committee. And because of the pandemic and climate change that we're experiencing, so we thought wellness is becoming a very important topic, and we really want to emphasize this, and hopefully to be just to be beneficial for for your projects, for your colleagues and clients, just to have this awareness. So thank you everyone for joining. And this is qualified for one AI continuing education, and this will be automatically reported. But if you want a certificate, please contact the AI office, Chris, and you would receive a certificate. And so some of the key, I'll just go through it quickly, is to just to identify key concepts in architecture design that helps professionals to deliver more thoughtful and intentional spaces that enhance human health and well-being. Discuss strategies that aim to advance health by setting performance standards for design interventions, operational protocols and policies, and a commitment to foster a culture of health and wellness. Equip individuals to problem solve, innovate, and challenge the status quo to build a healthier environment. Increase awareness of a holistic human-centric mindset in the practice of architecture and the built environment design. So again, just to say this again, that I'll do an introduction to the speakers today, and just a quickly introduction to design for well-being and well concepts, and we'll have a good chunk of time to move on to Q&A and discussions. And please remember to use the question box to type in your questions and thoughts along the presentation. So my name is Fanny Wu. I'm an architect at Gensler, licensed architect in California, and also a co-chair of the co-committee. And today we have Kina David, who is a director of sustainability at BCCI Construction. She is a WELL faculty member, WELL AP, and a lead AP ID plus C. And she has expertise in sustainability, green building, and chemistry. And she leads the sustainability department at BCCI, working with project teams to support clients' sustainability goals, as well as growing and shaping departmental initiatives. Yeah, so very long, but I will move on to the second guest we have today is Emmy Lafontaine. She's the sustainability project manager at Turner Construction. and she is a lead for Homes AP and a Well AP. And she manages the environmental efficiency program with a focus on reducing the embodied carbon of construction cycle. And we also have Josna Girdar, Sustainable Design Consultant at DES, and she is a lead AP, a BD plus C, a Well AP, and a Fitwell ambassador. And she is building a sustainability professional and also an associate director in the AIA Silicon Valley. And she's been contributing a lot to our community, just sharing a lot of resource and technical expertise too. So design for well-being is actually one component of the framework for design excellence. Design excellence is also used to be called the code top 10, which there are 10 principles to follow. And design for well-being is something that actually collects and connects all of the other 9 principles. So these are some of the code top 10 awards given in the past years. Good design supports health and well-being for all people, considering physical, mental, and emotional effects on building occupants and the surrounding community. Design for well-being, and some of the things we want to discuss in this forum are how can the design encourage a healthy lifestyle, how can the project provide for greater occupant comfort, and how can the project be welcoming and inclusive for all? How can the project connect people with place and nature? How can material selection reduce hazards to occupants? The focus topics for design for well-being from the AIA framework of design excellence, natural and artificial lighting, thermal comfort, indoor air quality, happiness, biophilia, connection to the nature, acoustics, food, movement, and exercise. So we want to go through quickly on the well building standards because there are a lot of really good content that overlaps with and also help guide us on this well-being concept. It is a healthy building movement. It is about the people. And we spend about 90% of our time indoors, especially after the pandemic. Our environment is changing how we live, changing work and culture, changing views, changing what we eat and how we feel. It's changing how we get around. The buildings where we live, work, learn, and relax profoundly impact our health, well-being, and productivity. So as you can see, this is, I believe, from the CDC, what determines the state of health. More than half, 50% is on the physical and social environment. And this is usually when medical and genes are we focus on, but we forgot the big chunk of the percentage that's so important to us, which is the environment, has to do with the environment that we're in and our human behavior. And why is this important and why would people want to invest in people? Because 90% of the benefits and salaries, 90% of the finances contributed to salaries and benefits for the employees, for the people. Just a comparison, so there's only 9% of rent and operations cost, 1% energy. So let's get to know what is well. So the IWBI and GB plus GBCI, actually they work hand in hand, and GBCI governs the testing and also the certification. It focuses on people and the planet and works with LEED and Green Star, BREEAM, and Living Building Challenge, which is also international. The development of well is scientific. It incorporate with the practitioner and medical expertise. And well is holistic. It put people in the center. It talks about goes into people's behavior and the way we design and the operations, which is the client side and operation sides. And the design is architects, designers, and MEP. So there's currently a transition. There's version 1, which is made up by 7 concepts, but it's transitioning slowly to version 2, which is the similar concepts but broken down into 10. So today we're going to look into high level 10 concepts and what they mean. So yeah, let's dive in. And again, if you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to just enter on the chat box so we can see and address them after this presentation. So air, it has a lot of performance metrics in this concept, and the ventilation and operable windows talks about filtration, construction pollution management, source of concern protection, smoking ban, maintenance and operations, and the microbe and mold control. In the most recent global burden of disease study, household air pollution was rated as the 10th most important cause of ill health for the world's population. The WHO estimates that 12.7% of deaths could be prevented by improving air quality globally. And as we know, California had wildfire and really significant impacted last year. So a lot of clients and designers are looking ways to improve our air quality. Water, accessing high quality drinking water and water management is also a big concern and a big highlight. Again, they lay out performance matrix, Legionella control treatment, drinking water promotion to make sure the occupants drink enough sufficient water. There's discussion on moisture management, and also hand washing is a big thing now, especially with the coronavirus. People who mistrust the safety of their water can be more likely to have lower intake of water and higher intake of sugar sweetened beverage. Due to the widely varying water quality across the globe, it is important to identify which contaminants are of concern on the local scale. Nourishment. Encourage better eating habits by creating food environments where the healthiest choice is the easiest choice. So on this one, it talks a lot about the fruit, vegetables intake and transparency, ingredients and promotion of healthy food and mindful eating spaces and the food preparation guideline. And we think about, okay, how does it do with the architects, the design community? Well, when we have like designing a cafe, we can be an impact, just making recommendations, like putting salads in front of, like the most easiest approach area. So just to start thinking about ways we can be impactful for people. Doesn't mean that we have to be in the food industry, right, to do that. Yeah, poor diets are the second leading risk factor for mortality and morbidity globally, accounting for 8% of all deaths and contributing to an estimated 9.6% of the global burden of disease. Research shows that individual change is more likely to occur when environmental conditions and influences are aligned to support individual behaviors. Light. Benefit from daylight and lighting systems designed to increase alertness, enhance experience, and promote sleep. So the importance of having occupant control, visual equity, circadian lighting design, and glare control, daylight access, visual balance, light quality, and then exposure and education. Disruption or desynchronization of the body's circadian rhythm has been linked with obesity, diabetes, depression, and metabolic disorders. Providing indoor access to daylight can positively influence and the productivity and mood of individuals. Oops, skip one. Yeah, so movement, promote active living through environmental design strategies, policies, and programs. Um, active buildings, communities, ergonomics, active furnishings, movements and circulation, active commuting, site planning and selection, physical activity space, physical activity promotion, self-monitoring. So I feel like this movement part has to do with stakeholders like designers and the users. Everyone have to cooperate to make this work, right? So I think this is the beauty of creating a community that everyone's doing this together. Yeah, data from 146 countries representing about 93% of the global population shows that nearly a quarter of the adult population are physically inactive. So yeah, this is a really significant number. And yeah, hopefully just, ever since I studied well, I start to, walk more and move more. Worldwide, if physical inactivity were reduced by just 10%, more than 500,000 deaths could be averted. Well, over 1 million deaths could be averted if physical inactivity were reduced by 25%. Thermal comfort. Maximize your productivity through improved HVAC system design and by meeting thermal preference. Performance metrics were stated in this concept: thermal zoning and individual controls, radiant thermal comfort, ongoing monitoring, and humidity control. Thermal comfort is ranked as one of the highest contributing factors influencing overall satisfaction in buildings. In the lab setting, personal thermal comfort devices has been shown to improve self-reported productivity rates and increase thermal comfort. So for just to touch on the thermal, it's very important to allow people to access and provide what works for me, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for other people. So it's also part of the inclusive design. Sound. Improve your experience with optimal acoustical comfort parameters. Again, performance matrix are set, and mapping, ways of designing on barriers, absorption, and masking. Sound within an enclosed space from sources such as HVAC systems, equipment, appliances, and other people has been shown to hinder productivity, focus, memory retention, and mental arithmetic. When exposure to noise is reduced, people are less susceptible to distraction, overall stress, and potential health risk. The fortification of facades element can ensure that exterior noise intrusion is subdued, much to benefit of personal comfort during work, study, and sleep. So there are times when there's a lot of background noise, and we're just so used to it. It actually causes stress on the in us that we don't even know, right? Materials. Reduce human exposure to hazardous building materials. So in this section, they list out all the like lead, asbestos, PCB, and mercury safety, a lot of the content that's toxic. A little bit of overlapping with lead, but again, we'll focus more on the people and people's behavior in mind too. List out the other structures, waste management, site remediation, pesticide use, and cleaning products and protocols. So it has to do with the building maintenance, VOC reduction, long-term emission control, and some transparency on the material. So 95% of chemicals largely used in construction lacks sufficient data on health impact. So sometimes when we look at our specs and reviewing submittals, this is something we want to pay closer attention to. So WELL aims to reduce risks of exposures and help bridge the data gaps in the supply chain, support innovation in green chemistry, and advance market transformation. Mind. So it supports cognitive and emotional health through design, technology, and treatment strategies. So accessing to nature, we all know it helps, and the organization can help focus and sleep support, business travel, tobacco prevention, and just some education on substance like addictions use and stuff. Over 30% of adults will experience a mental health condition during their lifetime. Depression alone is the single largest contributor to global disability. Design strategies such as access to indoor nature, as well as design and policy productivity, and focus can help relieve workplace stress and anxiety, reduce absence, and enhance overall perceived health status. Community, establish inclusive, integrated community through social equity, civic engagement, and accessible design. So just to, like we said earlier, to encourage community work together and just to help new parents, family support, being engaged with the civic and organizational transparency, which there's a thing called the just label, and bathroom accommodations, and emergency preparedness. Yeah, many people around the world still struggle with access to basic health service, and those are something that, yeah, companies and organizations can help on this, just bridging the gap. Designing built spaces in a way that enables all individuals to access, participate, and thrive within the systems and structures of each community is essential to shape individual and collective health outcomes. So I just had a quick example of where you put the mugs in a cafe or a break room, right? You want to have different heights because some people are shorter, some people are taller, and you don't want to discriminate any type of people because that affects our mood, right? Or the way we work, how we belong. So that's all critical. Okay, so just quickly taking a look at the different types of buildings that you can, project type that WELL you can choose from. And it's points-based scoring, so very similar to LEED. There's a silver certification, and as I know that getting silver is pretty easy. Most of the projects we work on is mostly qualified for silver, so do not get intimidated. And gold is only another 10 points, and platinum is 80. So here's just a process, design, construction, and you go online. It's all online to document everything. And there will be performance verification during the course. And at the end, you get a WELL report. And at the very end, you get certified. So we talked about this. So the verified performance on each points that you get are all data driven, so it's very scientific. There are also alternative adherence paths that you can use, just so it's never just the points that you get from WELL itself. So definitely WELL is in high demand. This is from 2016, and yeah, they're just growing reports of WELL certification being just so important with building design these days. So it helps the company to attract top talents, clients, investors, and it helps the employees and clients to be really health focused and increase productivity, and yeah, just improving satisfaction and happiness at work. So if we are in a healthy, well environment, we can produce and build the same thing and pass it forward to our clients and to our community. For residents, not just for commercial, for residents, it's also people are staying in their house, in their homes longer now. So this is definitely a focus to one thing that I really like is about the quality of sleep. I know a lot of people have sleeping issues, and just through design, you can help so many people. And I also really like how it can help affordable housing and just creating inclusive design and just bring all these concepts into the sector as well. Okay, so I went through it really fast because I wanted to give enough time for the forum itself. So I would just wanted to introduce, because I know some people joined a little bit later. So I want to introduce our special guest today. Maybe we start from Emmy.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Emmy Lafontaine. I'm a sustainability project manager for Turner Construction. I also sit in the Bay Area, but I work nationally on our portfolio as well. So I touch many of our business units and as such have been seeing kind of the trends on a national level associated with WELL of late.
Thank you, Emmy, for joining us today. And maybe we have Kina.
Hi, thanks for having me, everybody. Kina David, I'm the Director of Sustainability for BCCI. We're headquartered in San Francisco, but have offices in Silicon Valley and Los Angeles as well. And one of the unique things about BCCI is that we made an early commitment to WELL. Both of our Northern California offices are WELL certified. And actually, exciting news, we just received our WELL Health Safety Rating for our San Francisco office earlier this morning. So really looking forward to kind of helping other clients develop what their wellness response is. And I think there's a lot of overlap between COVID response and the WELL building standard.
Thank you, Kina, for joining us. And we have Josna.
Thank you, Fanny. Hello, everyone. I'm Jyotsna from DES Architects and Engineers, a sustainability specialist over there. We are excited to let you know that, we have also started looking at a lot of healthy building standards in-house, especially after COVID last year. And I do agree with Kina that with Fanny and everyone that especially after COVID, this is something that we really need to start looking at. And I'm really happy to be part of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Josna. Okay, and I just also want to introduce Madhu and Asha, and they're both part of organizing and championing for this wellness forum. So I just want to give a quick intro on them if you want to say something. Madhu, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Hi, this is Madhubala. I'm a designer at CSC Architects, San Francisco, and I'm also accredited professional. I'm really passionate about, designing healthy spaces, especially at a time like this. It's even more important to consider these aspects into our design. And I'm really happy to be a part of this forum.
Thank you, Madhu. Okay, Asha.
Hi, everyone. Hi, this is Asha from ADIS. And I'm also very excited to be part of this action towards healthy well-being And we do work for, looking at occupant comfort. And what excites me about health, about well, is it looks at, overall well-being, occupants and the building. So it's a great movement towards health and well-being. So excited to be part of the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. Okay, so I want to go through there are some questions that came in, and maybe we can start from a question from Mani. Does the movement factor include COVID impact of working from home? And maybe like Kina, Emmy, or Josna wants to answer that.
Sure. I think when we're talking about the movement category or concept within WELL, this is, all something that was built into the WELL building standard really pre-pandemic. So one of the things that WELL did, or IWBI did last year, is that they actually created a COVID-19 task force to look at the new WELL version 2 standard and ensure that there was applicability to the WELL buildings when it comes to COVID response. That being said, there's not currently a standard for homes. There is one for multifamily residential, but they are working on one for homes, but that's not included in the current WELL version 2 standard.
Thank you, Kina. And the next question also for Mani, are cultural criteria included in WELL building, for example, creating a sense of belonging, inclusivity for certain affinity groups, being sensitive not only to disabilities, but cultural groups, gender, fluidity, customs, traditions.
I might be able to start on that. I think, first of all, that's a really awesome question, because when we think of WELL, a lot of it is focused primarily on health, and a big part of health is really mental health, as increasingly we're finding. And at Turner, one of the things that we've started to map out, at least on our job sites, but it translates to the WELL concept as well, is kind of this graph of getting to zero incidents of worker safety. Now, I understand I'm kind of detaching it a little bit of the WELL, but hear me out. So when you start off in increasing or decreasing the incident rate, the first thing that you tackle is that behavioral health, which is, the actual environment that they're in. But after a point, that reduction of incident rates tends to stop decreasing and starts plateauing. And we really have identified that as being a psychological safety element. And so that psychological safety barrier is really intensely tied to diversity and a sense of belonging in the workplace, and how are we making the job site or the office a really inclusive culture. So, as far as I am aware, I'm not, and Kina, correct me if I'm wrong, or Madhu, I'm not aware of any credits within WELL that specifically address, gender neutrality, signage, for example. I know that within LEAD, there are credits that address that. But it is really important to consider that. And one thing that I might suggest is, rather than focusing on, does it fit within the WELL framework when you're doing design, one thing I might suggest, contextualizing this conversation around is, what can I take from WELL and apply it to all of the projects that we work on, right? Because another thing to think about when it comes to diversity and inclusion is, if you think about your typical client that is focusing on WELL, typically they are, the higher tech clients. Maybe they have some office workers who are kind of detached from some of the larger percentages of the workforce. They might be, less exposed on a normal basis. But these higher tech clients already typically have access to a lot of those resources. So what I might, what I'd like to propose is taking the concepts from WELL and including those within a typical design basis of design, because I think that is going to be one of the best ways that we as a community are going to be able to improve diversity and improve inclusion is making those resources and those fundamentals of green construction available to a higher audience, a broader audience of people.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that. Um, as Emmy said, WELL does not directly address diversity and inclusion. There are no specific credits per se, but they do address it in different ways. So for example, they do address the topic of neurodiversity in other ways when they talk about having different types of spaces in the project, spaces for collaboration, quiet spaces, spaces for deep focus, spaces for socializing. So in a way, they are including all types of people who make up a workspace and their needs. That's something that they do address. Plus, WELL also talks about other ways in which it does impact culture. So they do talk about biophilia and art, how you integrate both of these in your design. And that is going to have an impact on the culture, or it's going to be based off the culture of that company or that location. So in a way, it does encompass all of that within the standards. A lot of it is definitely falls within the scope of architects and mechanical engineers, especially things like biophilia and integrating art into the design process or creating this variety of spaces. There's a lot of opportunities in the design.
Yes, adding to Amy and Jyotsna's comments, like we don't have credits specifically for cultural inclusion, but I'm also working on the new Well version V2, where we are looking at some of these aspects. I mean, it's still in process, right? So, but again, there is also another way, like as a designer, if you feel like specifically if you want to be more inclusive of certain cultures, you can also pursue the alternative adherence path. So like lead innovation point, you can also pursue that if you can prove that that's going to be enhancing the health and well-being of the people. So in some way, if you can just prove that, it can be an innovation point from the designer's point of view or from the client point of view. That can also be done, but it's already been taken care, especially in workspaces, like a lot of diversity of spaces and things like that.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful, and yeah, just inspiring to hear different thoughts. So I have another question from Heather. It seems that there is a large cost to certify a project. It is my understanding that the cost starts at about $20,000. Do you know if that is true?
I can jump in on that one. That's definitely not true. There is a higher cost to WELL certification than, let's say, a traditional LEED certification. And the reason behind that is because there's really two main parts of WELL. One is the documentation piece, so the policies that you have as an organization, the design aspects of the space, but then there's also performance. And the performance piece is really what sets WELL apart from a lot of the other rating systems. And that performance piece is the on-site testing for things like air quality, water quality, acoustics, spot checks for materials, and a whole slew of things. So when you take a look at the cost of the quality testing that goes into that and the lab analysis, that's really what drives of a WELL certification. So it is based on square footage and project type and on a sliding scale. One of the benefits with WELL version 2 is you're able to hire a local performance testing agent. So this means that you can get someone that might be more cost effective and might be more readily available to get to your site and do that testing sooner than GBCI. So that's kind of one of the great things about WELL version 2.
Thank you, Kina. Yeah, thank you for the question so far. I have another one from Emily. How long does the certification process take after construction complete? completion.
I can jump in again. So after the construction is complete, you submit all of your documentation and that goes in for a round of review. So similar to any other review that we would have from a green building rating system, that takes anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months. And the reason it has to be at the end of construction is there's testing and balancing that goes into the reporting, which usually happens near the end of construction. After that, you can schedule your performance verification, that on-site testing. So we typically see well certifications come in anywhere as early as 6 months after construction, up to a year or a year and a half, depending on the complexities and the reviews or the performance verification results.
If I could jump in too, just to note, WELL is unique from LEED in that it really prioritizes continuation of previously established measures. So what that materializes like in the job site is, or in the office is, you have to recertify every 3 years. So it's not a one and done situation like you would see on a LEED project. Every 3 years, you will have to go through the performance verification process again to make sure that, you know, if air qualities has changed, that it's being maintained, that the water quality hasn't deteriorated over the years, that you're following up on some of the programs that you have, et cetera. So that is one of the added elements of certification, as well as a cost that the owner should be cognizant of going forward.
Great, thank you, Emmy. And you just answered Michelle's questions. Okay, so please continue to enter your questions on chat. And we have some questions that we prepared here as well. And some may be repeated, but yeah, I just want to, and feel free to also put in your thoughts in the chat as well. So I just want to ask the panelists today that how can the design encourage a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, probably I can take that. So when we are talking about encouraging a healthy lifestyle, it's basically encouraging the occupants to take action. And some of the ways the architect can take action is encouraging, providing fitness opportunities for the occupants. That is probably one simple way that really may not have a huge cost impact. When I'm talking about encouraging providing fitness opportunities to the occupant, it does not necessarily mean allocating spaces for that. It could simply be the way you're designing your staircase, where you're locating your staircase, if it is part of your work scope, or if it is not, if it's an existing building that is getting renovated, at least how you're designing, what are the things you're doing to encourage staircase use. If site work is part of your project scope, what are the things you can do to make it pedestrian friendly. If landscape is part of your project scope, there are a variety of things you can do to encourage pedestrian, to promote pedestrian activity there, to give restorative spaces there. These are all the various things that WELL has actually addressed in their rating system, and really it does not add any cost to it. So these are some of the ways.
Yes, and adding to Jyotsna, so that's how an architect's way of integrating healthy lifestyle into building, right? But one of the very unique aspects of WELL is it also looks at a lot of operational changes that a client can do. Especially in areas like food and mental health and fitness and things like that, where apart from your design decisions, as a client also, if you're interested in incorporating those operational changes, going for locally grown food or making it more accessible for healthy food and more fitness options. And also this is one of the major reason why we need to have a follow-up, because it's not like LEED where it's more of just system centric or design centric. It's also a combination of both. So it's important to make sure that it's perceived, or it continues to perceive the way it was certified, right? Because it's more of operations involved as well. So yeah, that way, I think it's more of a balanced certification that we have out there for buildings.
Thank you. So let me move on. The next question: how can the project provide for greater occupant comfort?
I can touch on this. I know that all of us have some good examples, but this does kind of go back to the idea of designed occupant comfort as well as operational occupant comfort. So just an example of, operational design comfort. It could be as simple as just taking surveys, and that is something that is part of the WELL program. Like Fanny mentioned in her presentation, there are, thermal comfort is one of the biggest complaints, for example, within the workforce, and that's something that can easily be addressed by understanding, hey, how's the temperature over here? In a survey, and conducting that on a regular basis. And then there's the designed aspect of it as well. That could come in the form of the furniture selection, for example, allowing for people to be able to sit and stand throughout the day, which is not only proven to reduce incidents of chronic work-related and occupational injuries, but it's also resulted in people adopting healthier lifestyles as well. So this, I don't know, Kina, Jyotsna, if you have any other anecdotal opportunities here that people can bring back to their design, but there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, just to add to Amy, yeah, I agree with her that there are plenty of opportunities to provide occupant comfort. Another big aspect is daylighting and quality of views. Again, it's within the purview of the architect to kind of include that as part of their design scope, does not necessarily add any cost to it. So especially daylighting quality views, there are numerous research that has been done on this aspect where they have a direct correlation to increasing the productivity by 16% to 30%. In fact, they had done a study on different sets of groups for students, for office workers, and also patients in healthcare. For patients in healthcare, they saw that when you increase access to daylight, their stay in the hospitals reduced by anything between 16 to 41%. So that is something that is well within the purview of architects. Historically, if you look at our great buildings, they have always accounted for daylighting. I think since the open office setup started in 1960s, we forgot about that. It's always a good idea to go back to it.
Thank you. Just got another question from Shafali. She's asking, or sorry, she is asking, are there any specific features in WELL that you find more challenging to implement than others?
I would say, first of all, that definitely depends on your project space type. So one of the key things with WELL, specific to air, is really about the air quality and the mechanical systems. And if you're a tenant in a multi-tenant building, you don't have jurisdiction over what those air systems are or what they could change to. So I think one of the key things when we're talking about, the barriers of implementation is working with the landlords of spaces, if you are a tenant space, in order to get those early conversations on what the limitations are and what possible pathways you could come up for mechanical maintenance, whether it's filtration or cooling coils. There's a lot of emphasis on that right now because of COVID as well. So I think a lot of people are having more conversations about mechanical, but that's probably the number one barrier to a lot of WELL projects and where we see the most alternative adherence pathways used.
Thank you, Kina.
Just to add to it quickly, yeah, I do agree with Kina on that. So we work on several core and shell projects where we do not have full jurisdiction on what the tenants do in their space. And the number one concern is the mechanical systems, because it typically ends up being a little pricey. I mean, if we are starting the conversation a little late in the game, and that's why it's very important to have that kind of conversation early on. I think the questions also goes to what happens, who is responsible for what, if the VOC content says shoots up and things like that. So it's important to have that kind of green lease. It's important to have that kind of all those requirements nailed down in the green lease and have that started conversation with the clients and the consultants early on so that we are able to manage that barrier a little better.
Yeah, so just to add on that, there's a point that is a charrette, and just to have everyone engaged early on so we know what we're going for. So I think that's a very important aspect of well. Okay, so I do want to touch on some more well-specific questions that we prepared. So what is the greatest impact feedback you have received from your own well office or clients? Any examples and thoughts?
Well, we recently certified our Los Angeles office, and we've been getting fantastic feedback from the folks there. What we've noticed is that, prior to COVID, of course, but we had a lot more people. I think it's just a visual feedback that has been the best, where you have a lot more people taking advantage of those spaces that were incorporated because of well, but they don't know that. What they see is just a really inviting deck. So they're starting to work outside more, which, as a contractor, you don't really see a ton of that. See people outside more, interacting more. It's some of the less tangible, less measurable impacts that we've really been seeing, where people are just really more excited to be in the office and more excited to be out with other people. Obviously with COVID, it's kind of thrown a wrench in things, and we actually had to prohibit people from coming in the office for a while. But prior to that, it was one of our favorite California offices for that reason, and people really loved going into that space. It's unspoken, but notable.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I think our biggest change is probably around nourishment. So specifically in our San Francisco office, our old office, we had snacks that was a candy drawer, and for beverages, we had a soda fridge. So moving into the new office and pursuing well certification, we got an on-tap bubbly or filtered or hot water system, got rid of all the sodas, and moved to more healthy snacks. So like nut packages, dried fruit, those kinds of things. And a lot of the feedback has been that people have chosen better habits in their entire lifestyle and cut out soda altogether. So I think, on that level, it's been a win. We've also encouraged our subcontractors when they come in with holiday gifts to also bring something healthy. So they'll bring a box of donuts and a bag of oranges, which is kind of cool to see them make that shift too.
Great. Thank you for the thoughts. So maybe we can have another question. Difference of well design for ground up versus landlord versus tenant spaces.
I can probably touch on that briefly. So well is pretty accommodative for all project types, whether it's new construction or where all spaces are or all aspects of the design are within the project scope, or if it's a core and shell project. So specifically, when it comes to developer-driven core and shell projects, of course, we are not going to have a say on every single aspect. For example, when it comes to nutrition, what kind of food we provide for the occupants, that's definitely not going to be within the scope of the project. And in such cases, we have something called well for core or well core. So the requirements are tailored for core and shell projects where it applies only to common spaces or direct staff or the facility managers, employees of the developer directly working in the project. So that is some kind of flexibility that well really offers well. So in addition to it, I'd just like to add that in addition to your commercial property, they also have an option for multifamily homes. Should have at least 5 dwelling units. So this is something they did not address right in the beginning. It was tailor-made only for offices. Now, since well version 2, they have really expanded for including all types of projects.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll have another question here. Challenges perceived and real of incorporating healthy design features in the project and pursuing WELL certification.
Okay, I can just the top challenge over here is definitely going to be the cost. The lot of features here pertains to mechanical design. That is not a showstopper. If we start that conversation, as we discussed earlier, if we start the conversation right from the beginning and have accounted for all that in our design, it's not going to be a showstopper. But as always, if you're going to start that conversation late, instead of MERV 13, we need a MERV 16, we need carbon filters, and that's going to change the sizing of the equipment. Yeah, of course, cost is definitely, I would say, the top, sometimes perceived, sometimes real challenge. So that's why it is, as mentioned earlier, it's important to have the design share it, like you mentioned, Fanny, and have that kind of conversation from the beginning. In cases where, for whatever reason, the project is unable to go in for an actual WELL certification because of cost constraints, that is when we would like to focus on the things that we would like that are within the scope of the architects that really add no additional cost. Like I was talking about the staircase design, like Ina mentioned, if the project really includes cafeterias in its within its scope, switching some food items to healthier options should not be a showstopper. It's not going to create a dent in the budget in any way. So those are some of the ways we can do it. My 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. Mani has a question, and I do have one closing question after this. Are WELL criteria meant to be generic regarding location, so they can be applied across the country, or do the criteria just to be regionally specific in order to adapt?
So WELL is an international standard, and it is really built on flexibility, but also regional priorities when it comes to environmental health. So when you sign up for a WELL project, there's a dynamic scorecard online that will allow you to view all of the different features within each concept. And those features are weighted differently depending on where you are located, what kind of organization you are, or what goals you have for your space. So if you are in, Mountain View, California, you're going to have a different weight of the air quality categories than if you're in, downtown Shanghai, because we have inherently better air quality over here. So it is meant to be a little bit flexible like that, so that each project can be a little bit more comparable on a global scale.
Thank you, Kina. So let me go to my last, whoops, did I not have that question in? Okay, this is the one. In lieu of the certification, if there are one or a few things a project team must do, what are they? So let's say, hey, my client does not have the budget to have WELL certified project, but we can still implement these concepts. And what is that one thing or a few things you can definitely use?
Well, cost can definitely be a limiting factor when we see things struck from the table. A lot of times it is WELL, because that certification cost does tend to be higher than LEED. It starts at about, roughly 10 grand going, I think it's capped at 98 grand. So it can definitely get up there depending on the size of your project. So, I think this really needs to be answered by the client, what the priorities are for their tenants. If there's differences in, mental health might be a priority for a certain type of client, other might prioritize physical health. I would say, given our location in California, especially with our risk of wildfires, if I were personally building my own project, I might prioritize the importance of having a really thorough filtration system just knowing that our air quality is highly dependent on the season of the year. And it has been a showstopper in some cases on some of our job sites, for example, us having to shut down and tell people not to come into work, which would be an impact on productivity for the office. So as far as things that could really put a stopper to the workflow, I might think about HVAC as being a priority and having that air quality be really top notch in our area. But again, really depends on the client type. It really depends on the location if you're working on other states as well. So
yeah, I think I agree with Emmy on that one. You know, our design trends over the past years have been really to be more collaborative, have more sit stand, more teaming areas, more touchdown areas. So I think there's a lot of kind of the movement piece and the ergonomics piece that's already in the designs that we see typically. I would say that with, you know, the wildfires as well as viral transmission, air would be where I'd double down.
Thank you. Yeah, so it is 1:01, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I just want to thank everyone, and especially the panelists, Jyotsna, Kina, and Amy, for joining us today. These are really insightful and good resource to have and just keep this conversation going. I do want to let everyone know that we will plan for the next session, which is in May. And yeah, and the topic will probably be on the line of case studies. So it'll be really looking at projects that has received well and has worked. So yeah, and if anyone has content, and just please reach out to me or Chris at the AIA office. Yeah, just let us know how you want to participate. Again, this is an open forum. We want to share the knowledge as much as we can. So I just want to thank everyone again, and looking forward to see you next time. Bye.
Bye.